Oh, welcome back, everybody.
How are you all doing?
It's Monday. Dominic Lee, it's so good to be back here with you again. Apologies to everyone for not being here on Friday, but I'm here now.
That's all that matters.
And I'm prepared.
The past is the past.
Because we had a hell of a card Saturday.
Oh, did we ever?
A card that, once again, I'm going to keep saying it because y'all keep talking shit. Another card that on paper maybe didn't have the biggest names, that wasn't the most stacked compared to, some of these other fight nights we've gotten lately. But it delivered. Oh. Look at all the finishes, especially on the prelims. And then the main card was pretty good too, including our main event with a very exciting finish.
Hello.
Shout out Derrick Lewis.
Black Beast.
And now he's got the
tied for the all-time KO TKO record in the UFC with 12.
Who's he tied with?
Vitor Belfort.
Interesting.
Right?
Not the name I thought you were going to say. Yeah. But yeah, it was a great night of fights, and obviously excited to talk about them. It's been a while for me since we didn't have a Wednesday episode, but how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Like you said, an amazing night of fights. I grinded out some articles this week. That was fun with Overtime Heroics, doing something different. Did my first recap, I'm starting to up the numbers.
Yeah.
You are pressing.
Dominic is fully embracing his role as a member of the MMA elite.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more proud.
Thank you. You're my biggest supporter. And
That's right.
did some fun things, for the podcast down the line.
Yeah.
But that's all discreet.
Yeah.
That's discreet.
Y'all are on a need to know basis, and right now
you don't need to know. But great week, great night of fights. Noah, I know you had a great week. Update the people, you're back. Just get them a little rundown before we start talking about some.
Yeah, I mean, it was just still working from home right now. Been a lot of snow. That's been a theme. So I
can barely walk in my damn door.
Yeah, so I didn't really leave the house too much this past week, but so it's been a little boring, I guess you could say. But things are starting to pick up a little bit. But yeah, I mean these fight cards that we talk about that we get on usually a weekly basis at this point. That's kind of my highlights, So I'm excited just to talk about it. But before we get into the fights that happened Saturday night. Y'all know what time it is.
They better.
It's time for the news.
The news.
We got 3 fight announcements.
Fun ones.
All good ones, too.
Yeah.
So we got one coming up, March 20th.
It is almost March.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And we got a ranked fighter to talk about, and another guy who's an up-and-comer looking to take that spot from him.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Riddell, the up-and-comer, as I mentioned. 9-1, going up against Gregor Gillespie.
He's back.
After a year and a half, pretty much.
Hasn't fought since his first professional loss to Kevin Lee in a brutal fashion.
And I'm curious, first, what your thoughts are going to be on this. But second, what kind of Gregor are we going to be getting here? I'm very curious what your thoughts are.
It's weird because Gregor, when he fought Kevin Lee, was already really under the radar. Mm-hmm. Kind of like a Diego Ferreira in that sense. Yeah. Especially for the lightweight division.
He was that Kevin Lee fight was his biggest stage, and obviously he kind of got put on a highlight tape. So not necessarily the way you want to make your entrance, but if he would have won that, I think it could have taken him to greater heights. Really, neither of those guys are really they're both kind of been inactive recently.
I think Kevin's only fought once since then. It was Oliveira,
and after that I believe tore his
ACLs and all that crazy stuff.
Both those guys have been relatively inactive, but Gregor especially. It felt like we hadn't heard about him even talking about. He hadn't even been rumored for fights.
That was November 2019 when he fought Kevin Lee. So he's ranked 15th.
So he's down to 15 now.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will say I think it's smart. I do think this is a good matchup to come back to.
And it's a good fight for Riddell.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's not because Riddell is not a good fighter, but it's another guy who's still working his way up the rankings.
Another guy with just one loss, but it's not some stud in this killer's row of lightweight to come back to if you're Gregor.
That's what I'm kind of getting at. And, Brad Riddell, 9-1, 5 of his wins via TKO KO.
Yeah.
No submission wins. So you got a big style clash there where you have a guy who's going to want to keep it on the feet.
And Gregor's a great grappler.
A grinder. Mm-hmm. That dude does not stop at anything for those takedowns.
And we saw it happen when it stays on the feet.
We did.
And that was against a guy that wasn't even, Kevin Lee's not known as a striker.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a hand kick.
And I will say, even though Rydell's 3-0 in the UFC, all 3 of his fights have went to a decision. Mm-hmm. One, Magomed Mustafayev, split decision. That's another guy to keep watch out for. But, his UFC career so far has not shown that finishing ability. Before he was in the UFC, he finished pretty much all of his wins. So, I'm curious. I'm interested to see what kind of fight we'll get there. His one loss, armbar submission. And not that Gregor necessarily is pulling off submissions like that off his back or anything, but it does make me wonder whose style is going to kind of come out on top. And I think to add to this discussion, Gregor, elephant in the room, 1.5 year layoff, what kind of guy are we getting in there? Mm-hmm. We just saw another guy who was highly touted make a return named Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Yeah.
And he got kind of flat.
Looked stiff,
Yeah, he got, against Li Jingliang, who, all respect to him, a great fighter, a guy I even picked to win that fight. But Ponzinibbio looked slower, he looked smaller, he just didn't look like the same guy that we had seen destroying Neil Magny headlining a fight night. And I just wonder if Gregor's going to have that same kind of ring rust, or however you want to word it. So do you think that might be the case, or do you feel like... Because it appears that injuries haven't really played a factor in him sitting out this long. At least not... I've not heard anything.
Yeah, there's literally been nothing about him.
So it's hard to tell, but I'm just saying that it doesn't appear that injuries have been a factor, and it seems like he just took some time away.
Maybe he did just want to take some time away. First loss, it was a brutal loss.
It's a tough one.
Regain, of course, COVID in 2020 didn't help, probably, if there were fights, at least under the radar, that weren't out publicly, that were trying to get made. So this is a good fight for both guys, and I am curious to see how Gregor bounces back, though. That's what I want to see the most.
It's coming up soon. We're literally a little less than a month away at this point, so...
March is just...
Yeah, so that'll be a good fight for that fight night on March 20th. Moving on. Now we got 2 fights happening in May, back-to-back weeks. Starting May 8th. Fight night. Holly Holm, Juliana Pena.
Yep.
Not the matchup I thought we would get.
Not at all.
But I'm happy to see it.
It's a fresh one.
Yeah, that's my point, because these 2 ladies were on the fight night where it was headlined by Holly Holm, Irene Aldana. Co-main was Jermaine Durandamy and Juliana Pena. That's where Pena got... kind of an embarrassing loss in a way.
Great fight, too.
Great fight. Yeah. And not that Juliana looked bad, but
she
embarrassing
got submitted by...
got the first time ever in GDR's career where she got a submission win.
Yeah.
While in the main event, Holly Holm put on
one of the best performances.
A very underrated performance for that year, in a year filled with awesome performances. But she looked incredible against Aldana, who was... really making a push for like a title shot after that knockout she had of Ketlin Vieira.
She styled on her.
So I really thought coming off that fight, I'm like, okay, I think Holly Holm and GDR are just going to have a rematch. As much as I hate the first fight, it just seemed like
this one would have been at 135, maybe a little better.
But in a way, I'm kind of, even though I said that in that episode, I was like, okay, you do the rematch because they both won. They're both like the top 2 bantamweights. You do that fight. However, I can't say that I'm not more excited for this one.
Well, I mean, if Juliana wins, she would be next because she's yet to fight Amanda, whereas Holm and GDR both have already. So that's the biggest thing going for Pena. Of course, we all know Juliana called out Amanda after her most recent win against Sarah McMahon. That was crazy. I respect it, though. I'm not hating on it. And as we know, Amanda's busy at featherweight come, that's only 2 weeks away now. Woo! Anyway, yeah, that's a fun fight. Pena, of course, the grapple-heavy fighter. Holly, literally like a world champion boxer. So, interesting. How do you foresee it going with the striker-grappler matchup here? Juliana can hold her own on the feet, but we saw GDR was definitely getting the better of her.
She was, but Juliana had a very good ability to get that fight to the ground. And not that GDR has much of a takedown defense. You saw that against Amanda Nunes. Her takedown defense leaves a little something to be desired. Holly Holm is a tough person to take down.
She's so fast.
And not only
mobile.
that, but her striking is probably all around.
In and out, boom, boom, gone.
Maybe the best striker in the women's divisions outside of Amanda. I mean, she's incredible, and she showed that against Aldana. She's not slowing down, despite the fact that she's 38.
Yeah, she's
up there.
She's 39.
39.
Yeah, man, she don't look it either. Physically, she's such a beast.
I think that on paper, Holly appears to have the advantage because her striking's very elite, and she does have very good takedown defense, while Juliana, while being a good grappler, and not being bad on the feet either, I would even go as far to say that she does pretty well on the feet. She won't be able to hang with Holly on the feet.
Right.
At least you wouldn't think so. So then taking her to the ground, though, is just harder than...
Easier said than done.
Done. So I think Holly on paper has the advantage, but Juliana did look really good in her last fight against McMahon, who's another really tough
Came
fighter.
From behind, really showed her toughness in that one.
And also, just based on the fact that Pena called out the champ, the GOAT of women's MMA.
She don't care.
It tells me that she's really making a push in 2021 to make that what people made fun of at the time a reality.
But for her, it makes sense. I mean, she literally, if she wins, she will be next because she hasn't fought Amanda.
It's just hard for me to even imagine Holly really being on her back, really being on the ground outside of the Misha Tate fight where she lost her belt. Outside of that, I don't know if I've seen her be taken down or on her back or anything.
She wins or loses on the feet.
Yeah, so it's I like the matchup, I do.
Yeah,
and I don't think I'm not going to count out Juliana. I don't want it to come off like that. I just think that Holly's got a more clear route to victory based on the strengths and weaknesses of both fighters. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Well said. On to the next.
Yeah, so a week later, May 15th, UFC 262. This one's hot off the presses.
That's supposed to be the pay-per-view in May.
Hot off the presses. Our big fight at flyweight gets announced. The number 4 ranked Alex Perez. He's the guy that fought Davison Figueiredo for the belt at UFC 255. His next matchup's going to be against Matt Schnell. That's right, it's Matt Schnell.
Yeah, not Max.
Not Max Schnell from the movie Cars.
If you don't know, you just need to go find it.
But Matt Schnell's ranked 7th. This is happening UFC 262. Great fight.
That is a really good fight.
And it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, truthfully, Perez was kind of, what do you call it? Like, he was really shot out of a cannon into that title picture.
He was looked at as he's going to be the Contender Series guy that can win a belt.
Yeah. So, and truthfully, he went up against an absolute killer.
Yeah.
And that's just unfortunate for him. But at the same time, he does show a lot of promise, still a very young guy. Matt Schnell has had a mixed run of things, but coming off a very good
clean
win, very clean performance against Tyson Nam. What are your thoughts here?
He's won 2 of his last 3. The lone loss coming to Pantoja. We know how good Pantoja looked.
Pantoja was the reason that win for Alex Perez with the leg kicks. That's how he got that title shot against Davison.
This is fun because Matt Schnell is literally like a really crisp technical boxer. Perez is a very aggressive and well-rounded, but a grapple-heavy guy at the end of the day when it comes down to it. Mm-hmm. But I think if it is on the feet, it's not necessarily one-sided for Schnell. Because I think Perez presents a few more problems than just the hands. We've seen literally finish fight with leg kicks, and he's got good body work. I think this is going to be a really good fight, a grinded-out style fight. For Schnell, it'll be his biggest test, his biggest platform. Again, he lost to Pantoja, but now he's bumping up to fight number 4. This division's always just so crazy, so who knows what could be for the winner of this. And Perez, can he bounce back from a devastating title loss?
Yeah, one that came so quickly and really didn't give him much of an opportunity to showcase much of anything. The title picture's kind of taken up at this point. You're inevitably going to get a rematch with Davison and Brandon Moreno sometime, I would hope, in the summer. And then you got Pantoja, who's kind of making a big run of things back after his big win.
Askar and Joey B are fighting
next month. Don't forget Askar.
Literally on the prelims, that's why.
Yeah, but you can't forget that one just because those two guys, whoever wins that, could be next.
Yeah.
And so for Alex Perez, he does have that win over Pantoja. So you think if he gets a win here, that kind of inserts him around like 3rd on the totem pole.
Yeah.
you do Moreno rematch. Winner of that fights the winner of Asgard Joey B. Maybe if Alex Perez wins this fight, maybe he gets the loser of Asgard Joey B. It all depends.
And if Joey B were to beat Askar, but Davison holds his belt, they're not going to do Joey B and Figgy again.
A lot of
then
this
it's like, Pantoja might just get a title
A lot of
shot.
it depends on if Moreno can actually win the belt, or if Davison holds on. If Davison decides to relinquish, go to bantamweight, like I am predicting him to do at some point this year. But that's a topic for a different video. It's just a good fight to make, and I think if you want to even sidestep into another potential matchmaking here, I think that opens up old Brandon Royval.
You got to do Raw Dog and Pantoja.
Yeah, I love that fight.
Got to do it. Got to do that.
I'm a huge Brandon Royval fan. I've been on his train for a while.
You want to talk about somebody we stand? It's Brandon Royval.
It's Raw Dog Royval.
Yeah.
But Pantoja looked
very
good.
Yeah. Against a former champion at Ryzen, Manel Cape.
Yeah.
So.
And Manel Cape having all that hype, and
Yeah.
I really thought Cape was going to come in there and make a big showcase, and Pantoja just kind of neutralized everything.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of moving pieces in the flyweight division. Keep a lookout for it, though. These fights do tend to get kind of pushed to the bottom of these cards, like Joey B. Asgard on the prelims, even though it's a very high-profile matchup. So keep a lookout for some of these guys who might be fighting Davison or Moreno in the future, and don't just pay attention to as awesome as Davison is, and now Brandon Moreno's kind of showing to be. There's a lot of guys in this division making some noise.
We love the flyweights.
Mm-hmm. But that is happening UFC 262, May 15th. But I think that's the end of the news. Let's get into some fights. So I'm going to start by just going over the results of our 6-fight main card. We started our night at heavyweight.
Hey, and we ended it with heavyweight.
Yeah, we did. And
3 heavyweight fights.
Yeah, this one hurts me a little bit.
Yeah.
Tom Aspinall, who is one of the best prospects in the heavyweight division.
Oh, yeah.
He got probably his first test in the former UFC heavyweight champion, and my best friend, Andrei Arlovsky. Aspinall passed the test, getting a rear naked choke submission a minute and 9 seconds into the second round. I know you'll want to talk more about that later, but just what a great submission for him, for a guy who a lot of people questioned his abilities to get to the ground and everything. After that, middleweight, Phil Hawes gained a majority decision over Nasruddin Imavov, 29-28 on 2 judges' scorecards for Hawes, and then there was a 28-28 draw in there as well. Kind of a bit of a dud.
Yeah, that was my predicted fight of the night.
It just, sometimes that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
After that, another heavyweight fight. Chris Dawkins, another one of these heavyweight prospects. This is going to be a theme here.
Yep.
He gets the TKO win a minute and 55 seconds into the very first round over Alexei Oleinik.
Yeah, it was.
Apparently some controversy with the stoppage,
It was,
but I have a hard time buying into that. Then we move on to featherweight. Derrick, is it Minner?
Let's go with Minner.
Derrick Minner getting a very, very lopsided unanimous decision win over Charles Rosa.
Very grapple heavy.
The scorecard's a little wild.
Literally 3 different scorecards.
30-26, 30-27, and then 29-27 on the 3 judges' scorecards. Then our co-main event at catchweight, 138 pounds. Yana Kunitskaya ends up pulling away with the unanimous decision win over Ketlin Vieira, 29-28 on all 3 judges' scorecards. And then the big matchup at heavyweight. One that I think a lot of people... This was the biggest underdog win in a main event since Michael Bisping over Luke Rockhold at UFC 199.
CR, UFC 199, pay-per-view classic review.
Shameless plug.
The
biggest I'm kind of shocked he was a plus 350.
Yeah.
Now that I'm looking at it. But a lot of people were really thinking that Blaydes was just going to grind this one out, kind of like he did against Volkov and other guys before that.
Including myself.
But Lewis decided to turn Curtis Blaydes to a plank of wood.
Yeah.
A minute 26 seconds into the second round with a vicious uppercut, just completely slept Curtis Blaydes.
You want to talk about a perfectly timed shot.
Derrick Lewis continues to be the biggest anomaly in the UFC and in MMA as a whole.
What a guy.
Really, just one of the biggest characters. And
And he's an animal, man.
I
He's
mean,
16-5 in the UFC.
Yeah, like a guy who really just doesn't quite get the respect he deserves, but also
he's an animal.
He's such an anomaly because he's not the most skilled technically fighter, especially if you guys. I challenge everyone to go look up some clips of people breaking down Derrick Lewis's what would you call it? His grappling defense. Because there is none. He literally just stands up.
He stands up.
He's like, nope, I don't want to be on the ground. I get up now.
And he
does.
It's quite odd.
It is, because you would think that would open him up to some sort of submission or
no. He just
something. Nope,
he's
just
stands
like,
up.
nope, I'm gonna stand up.
And then the guy that was on top of him's like, that's
Come
not.
again?
Yeah, what are we doing?
But regardless, we'll talk about all of those in a second. However, new segment on the show that we introduced.
Tell them about it.
Last week, Prelim Notable.
So
this is just an opportunity for me and for Dom to give our guy on the prelims or woman who stood out the most to us. Who was the biggest takeaway for us on the prelims. Kind of gives those people a chance to shine a little bit since we usually only talk about the main cards. I'm going to let you start here.
Miss Casey O'Neill.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the biggest one as a whole.
Yeah. Born in Scotland, fighting out of Australia, undefeated coming into this fight, takes on Shayna Dobson, who had just come off of that huge win, one of the biggest upset wins in UFC history when Shayna Dobson, I can't remember the girl that she beat, but it was a crazy upset fight because we were talking about it, how Shayna was going to get destroyed, and then we looked like idiots, and everybody hated us for that. You know what I'm saying. So Casey looked absolutely incredible start to finish here, super aggressive. These two came out and were just throwing hands. This really was the best fight that I watched on this whole card last night. There was no official fight of the night given, but this was up there for me. Very fun first round, back and forth. Casey began to implement the grapple-heavy style near the end. And then round two, it was all Casey from the get-go. Took Shayna down, held the top mount for nearly the entire round, and then eventually gets the TKO finish 3 minutes and 41 seconds into that second round. Casey O'Neill now 6-0, 1-0 in the UFC against a very game opponent in Shayna Dobson. We may or may not have just witnessed the birth of a future title contender at flyweight last night.
Especially considering this flyweight division is really looking for those challengers to fill out that top 15. A lot of times these ladies are in this division are getting a win or two wins and they're immediately in the top 15.
Yeah.
It's still they're still filling out that roster there. So for her, a huge win. Shayna Dobson, we've talked. She did have a huge win in her last fight against someone who. What was the name of the?
I know, man. I literally just blanked on it as well.
I got it right here. Maria Agapova.
Yeah, because it was one of the biggest upset victories in UFC history.
Because now her record, Shayna Dobson, 4-5.
Yeah.
So you look at that and you go, oh, okay. Well, Casey O'Neill beat someone who's not very good.
The record really not put it on perspective.
I mean, the way Dobson looked against Agapova, though, you can't take that away. So for Casey O'Neill to get a win like that, you got to think she's knocking on the door for top 15 already.
Yeah, and she looked so well-rounded. She looked good on the feet, and the grappling was next level.
I'd like to see her get one more.
Oh, yeah.
And then you start talking top 15. But regardless,
the women's flyweight division.
I've been
top
saying
to bottom.
I've been saying it.
Top to bottom, man.
It's going to be tough to dethrone our champion Valentina.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying
it's rounding out.
Yeah, it's really rounding out, and I'm very happy about that. So for my prelim notable, there's a lot of options, but Casey O'Neill was definitely like the biggest takeaway in my opinion. So then I had to think, do I want to go strictly off of a performance or more so as like a fight as a whole? And this time, usually I would probably go performance because it's meant to showcase a certain fighter. So I will just say, shout out to Ayman Zahabi. I feel like he's I feel like he deserves kind of to be spoken about a little bit. However, it's not going to be who I focus on here. I'm going to go with Julian Erosa for his win over Nate Landwehr with that flying knee 56 seconds into the first round. What a wild fight, man.
56 seconds of beautiful chaos.
So Nate Landwehr has been a guy on my radar basically since he debuted in the UFC. He had made quite a name for himself fighting for, and I'm going to blank on it now. Where was Conor double champ at?
cage fighting?
Yeah,
or
Cage
Cage
Warriors,
Fury?
Cage Warriors.
Cage Warriors,
So
yeah.
Nate Landwehr, I believe, made a name for himself in Cage Warriors. I'm actually going to cross-check that real quick just so I don't sound stupid. Yeah, see, I'm wrong. He was fighting for M1 Challenge. So he was fighting some higher-level competition. Basically, my point is that he was definitely making a name for himself on the regional circuit. Coming into the UFC, being 13-2.
He comes to bang.
Yeah, but he started his UFC career on a interesting note where he got literally flatlined with a knee by Mr. Herbert Burns, another big prospect, and that one coming in the first round. Then he got a decision win over Darren Elkins.
That fight was crazy.
Yeah, and then he comes into this fight with Julian Erosa, who is 31 years old right now, will be 32 in July. After this win, he's 25-8. The guy's been doing it for a long time. And this was something that stood out to me. The guy's got 25 wins, 11 via knockout, 11 via submission. The guy is very well-rounded. And getting that kind of highlight reel KO and having such an exciting fight, even though it literally went less than a minute.
Yeah.
I had to give him a shout-out because it makes me want to watch him again.
Hey,
I want to see. These are that's the kind of fights that are going to get you higher up on the card.
And ladies and gentlemen, he landed a flying knee. Yeah. That's how he finished the fight. He went in for ground and pound.
But. And listen, there's a reason they kept this guy around. Because, listen to this. Erosa is from Dana White's Contender Series. He got a knockout head kick over Jamal Emmers. Then, he dropped 3 straight fights in the UFC to Devontae Smith, Grant Dawson, and Julio Arce.
Man, that's honestly, 2 of those 3 especially tough.
Then he gets cut. Gets a win at Cage Sports 60, comes back, and has now won 2 straight.
There you go.
So he had a Darce choke and then this flying knee KO. So look at that. Showing just, I love the well-roundedness. I love that he's a finisher, but he finishes the fight anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving him a shout-out. I don't know what his ceiling is. It might be, he's already 32. He's still got a ways to go before he's really hitting a top 15. But for putting on such an exciting fight for as short as it was.
Freaking awesome.
I love those kind of scrap-em fights, as much as a technical war, And sometimes those fights they're a little bit appealing as well. So, Julian Erosa, you are my prelim notable.
Welcome.
Welcome
you are now etched in stone.
Now we move on to our main card. I'm going to let Dominic start here with our heavyweight opener, Tom Aspinall versus Andre Arlovski.
So for those of you that don't know or didn't catch the preview Friday, big Aspinall guy here.
Yep, and I'm a big Arlovski.
And Noah's a big Arlovski guy.
Yeah.
So get out.
We've been at odds a little bit over this one.
So Aspinall, I just love seeing prospects in the heavyweight division because it's really stale. It's so top heavy, but now all of a sudden we have guys like Aspinall, we have guys like Chris Daukaus, who we're going to talk about later. Aspinall, out of the UK, trains with the likes of guys like Darren Till over there in Liverpool. An absolute stud. Boxing, so crisp, so fast, his hands. And, he looked great. Nearly finished the fight in the first round. Had Arlovski badly hurt up against the cage. When he started hitting him in the body, I felt it watching from my TV.
Yeah.
It was very brutal. But Arlovski, being the veteran that he is, weathered the storm. And, from there I was like, okay, Aspinall's got a little test here. Andre's not going out easy. But then, listen, when I say this was one of the quickest, so a minute 19 or a minute 09, whatever, into the second round is when the fight ended. Aspinall, after, feeling out on the feet, lands a double leg takedown, beautifully timed, may I add, as Andre went in for a punch, timed it perfectly. For a guy that's known as a boxer, by the way, his grappling's pretty damn good. His dad teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, what's funny is
Aspinall BJJ.
A lot of the questions about him were going to be his grappling because he's been so polished on the feet. People thought he might struggle with the grappling. Didn't show it here.
Yeah, this was his second submission win. He gets the takedown. Immediately the force behind it forces him straight to the cage. Immediately transitions to back mount. Immediately locks in a rear naked choke. And I kid you not, from the time he wrapped his arms around Andre's legs to the tap, plus or minus, give or take 1 or 2, 10 seconds, the whole process. Mm-hmm. One of the quickest takedown to back mount to submission transitions, and then gets the freaking victory. Unbelievable stuff out of a guy known as a boxer.
Yeah. I'll say it. I predicted Arlovsky to win this fight. I guess I should feel somewhat lucky I wasn't.
You do need to let them know as we go what your predictions were because they didn't hear them.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So, because I texted them to Dom before the card started, so that way they would be
etched in stone as
so
well.
that way I didn't cheat and switch them after the fact. But I had Arlovsky winning this fight via decision. And in my head, I fully expected, the way the first round played out, was I nervous? Of course. But that's always the case with an Arlovsky fight. In my head, I was like, if he can weather this storm, it looked like towards the end of the first round, Aspinall was starting to slow down a little bit. Arlovsky looked like he was getting a little more comfortable. I went, okay, I'm still holding strong on my decision prediction for Arlovsky.
Yeah, Arlovsky did not look bad at all.
No, he looked a little slow. And I mean, a lot of that's because Aspinall was 15 years younger.
Yeah.
42 versus 27.
Yeah.
So Aspinall, of course, having the speed advantage and the power advantage. But I just really thought Arlovsky's veteran quality was just going to shine through, and I think it could have. However, again, maybe Arlovsky just not being ready for the grappling of Aspinall. Maybe he was just fully expecting us to be a stand-up fight. I'll say this because I wasn't on the show Friday. My whole reason for why I thought Arlovsky was going to be able to get this win had to do with, if you go back to the last couple times Arlovsky's been matched up with these
young guns.
I mean, not even like his last win over Tanner Bozer. That was another guy in a similar place to where Aspinall is, and Arlovsky looked really good in that fight. But if you go back before when he was losing to these guys, because Arlovsky really for the last 3 years, 4 years even, has been basically the gatekeeper for these prospects to be like sink or swim.
Yeah.
Can you beat a guy like this and really take on top 15 level talent? So we'll start with Francis Ngannou, who knocked out Arlovsky in the first round. Mm-hmm. His next fight after that was being the third fight of the main card on UFC 218, where he fought Alistair Overeem, and it was a very high-profile matchup. He obviously got up, maybe knockout of the year.
One of the craziest uppercuts ever.
Yep. And then you got Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who did it just a couple years ago. Knocks out Arlovsky in the first round. What's his next matchup? Also against Alistair Overeem. More importantly, main event of an ESPN card. So in my head, I go, if Aspinall knocks out Arlovsky in the first round, do I really see him getting that kind of fight next? And I don't. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so that shows me that Aspinall is still kind of green. He's still working his way up. So I thought it might be just a bit much too soon. Not really the case here. He passed the test. With that, I think I'm ready to see him fight top 15, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, you know what I appreciate most about Aspinall, and this was the same way after his second win in the UFC. He knows his place. Mm-hmm. So he's not going to do some outrageous, unrealistic call-out. He knows his goals and where he wants to be, but he realizes where he is now and all the work he still has to do. And I respect that when a fighter can just say it outright.
Right.
And he had the perfect call-out. He literally said, Dawkins and Oleinik are fighting tonight. I'd love to fight the winner of that one. Oleinik being number 10 in the UFC rankings. Dawkins unranked, but much like Aspinall, also was 2-0 going into last night. Also both via first round KO, TKO. These guys are literally on the same track right next to one another. And we'll get into that fight in a second. But
well, I'm curious, is that going to be your fight?
For matchmaking, yes. You do ask. Now, here's the problem. It's two prospects, right? Both 3-0 in the UFC. All three via finish. Dawkins has finished all three of his in the first round KO TKO. Yeah. Aspinall finished 2 KO TKO first round and now a second round submission. Both guys got the featured win of their career last night. Arlovsky, former champ. Oleinik, top 10. Mm-hmm. So, if you're the UFC, do you want to pair your two biggest prospects in the division right now together, or do you want to wait?
And just
when it's clear, a little more important, because Dawkins said the exact same thing. He said, yeah, I'll fight Aspinall, but wouldn't it be cool to see it a little bit later when it's a little more important? And I was like, you sly dog.
That's why I'm not. I'll let you. Is that what you want to go with?
I'm going to go with it anyway. Yeah. I love that
fight.
I
think it's a
Dawkins,
great fight.
Aspinall.
I'm going to go with Walt Harris.
Ooh, yeah.
So Walt Harris, a guy who's had a tough go of things in 2020, he lost versus Overeem.
He lost to Reem, yeah.
A fight where he looked really good early, but then he got tired after he couldn't finish Overeem. Reem came back, one last stand.
Volkov, man.
And then Volkov, the body kicks. Woo. So Walt Harris on a bit of a skid on his way down. This is a fight against a guy who, again, a very tough prospect, a guy who's really working his way up. But it's a step back for Harris in that way, at least prove it if you want to go by accreditation. While Aspinall, that's his chance to get into the top 15. Not only get in there, but get into around... Walt Harris is going to be around 12, because right now he's 11. But Dawkins is going to move in there in front of Oleinik. So I like that fight. I think it's a great stand-up fight, but also... it would be interesting to see if Aspinall would continue to try to maybe grapple a little bit, because Walt Harris is not necessarily...
He's a good grappler, isn't he?
I
guess he's kind of like a heavyweight Derrick Brunson, but not as wrestle heavy.
I just feel like he doesn't really... I don't feel like we see it a whole lot from him. And once he's on his back, he's really not in a good spot. But, I suppose with all these heavyweights, they kind of do pretty well when they're on top.
Well, what was that stat you sent me last night about Aspinall's submission?
So I'll talk about that.
This is interesting.
Essentially, let me see if I can find it here. There have only been 19, this is from Ariel Helwani's Twitter account. There have only been 19 rear naked chokes in UFC heavyweight history, including Aspinall, that happened Saturday night. Alexei Oleinik has 2 wins by rear naked choke, but no other fighter has more than 1.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's just interesting that he was able to do it to Arlovsky, of all people, and that it...
And it shows how many heavyweight fights just finished by KO.
Yeah, exactly. Heavyweight division continues to be just so weird when you consider the lack of title defenses before Stipe came along. It's just so interesting. But Walt Harris, give me that fight.
That is a good
There's a few options. JDS was sticking out to me, but I don't want to see that for JDS at this point. Actually, if you want to go on the loser, Arlovsky versus JDS.
Yeah, you could do that.
They haven't fought before.
Isn't that crazy? I'm big on when heavyweights, though, like similar to Blaydes and Lewis, haven't fought before. Because so many of them have seemed to have matched up at some time or another. So, yeah.
It'd be easy for me to say Arlovsky should retire, but that man...
He still doesn't look bad.
No.
I know he got submitted and it looked relatively easy, but before that, he weathered a storm. He was landing a few shots,
And I really thought JDS should retire, because I do. The guy... But at the same time, a fight with Arlovsky, legend fight, I wouldn't mind it.
Do it.
So that's what I'm going to go with. I don't know if you had any... Did you have any matchmaking for
I've
Arlovsky?
honestly none in mind. Yeah. I don't hate him and JDS.
Or him and Oleinik.
Yeah. We'll get in on Oleinik in a second.
So we're going to move on to the second fight of the evening. A bit of a dud. Middleweight, Phil Hall's getting that majority decision over Nassourdine Imavov. Dom, I know you probably have a lot of thoughts. This was your predicted fight of the night. Didn't quite live up. By the way, I'm actually going with Aspinall Arlovsky for fight of the night. For as exciting as this card was, none of these fights on the main card quite stood out as being a fight of the night.
Right.
Either they just kind of got finished too early, or they weren't the fights that went to decision were either a little too one-sided or just not that great. And then our main event was just kind of getting started before, it kind of got stopped right when it was starting to maybe get a little better. It's just that's why I'm going Aspinall Arlovsky. It was kind of the fight I had the most fun with on the main card. But Hall's Imavov, go ahead, give us your thoughts.
I was so looking forward to this because this matchmaking was so good. Both guys were 9-2, tons of finishes, 6-fight win streak, 5-fight win streak. Oh, I was all about it. Phil Hall's the Contender Series guy. But, he came out with a wrestle heavy approach, which I don't hate on. I appreciate all aspects of the game. Don't we know? We appreciate it all. But I think he realized early on that Imavov was a beast on the feet. When he touched Halls, he was hurting Halls.
Yeah.
And Halls wanted no part of it. So the first 2 rounds was all Halls. He held him against the clinch. If he wasn't on the clinch, then he had him on the ground. Not too much ground and pound. He was really just kind of doing what he needed to do to get the nod on the scorecards. The third round, Imavov had Halls hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He had him on the wobbly legs. And I think he could have finished the fight had he been just a tad more aggressive and just kept throwing. But he would hurt Halls and then allow Halls to clinch him. And Halls is so strong that he just couldn't get back out of the clinch to get, open it back up in the middle of the cage. So part of me was like, oh, Imavov, man, like, just get some separation. It's going to take one more shot and he's going to fall. But then I picked Halls to win, so I was like, well, I guess I do want Halls to hold on. But not a bunch of takeaways here. Hall's now on a 6-fight win streak, though. Before that, all 5 of them came via first-round KO.
Well, let's talk about how he was on the main card for UFC 254 against, forget the guy's name, the guy who he trains with, I think he trains with Wicker or something like that.
He may. All I know is he got him out in 18 seconds.
Yeah, that was insane. Yeah. However, it was so interesting to see him kind of look like lesser of the two on the feet.
Maybe it was just one of those nights where something wasn't clicking.
I still have some hopes for these two and really for Halls. That was the guy that I was really excited about getting this place on the main card. But they just didn't really... There's really not much to take away, and there's not really much to be excited about right now for these two, in my opinion.
Had he came out there and starched another opponent and made it 6 straight, I would have been like, okay... You and Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland just now got ranked 15th at middleweight. Right. That's a fire matchup. But then I was like, okay, he's good. He did what he had to do to win. Maybe he just had an off night or something.
Yeah.
One more. Yep. He needs one more.
I think he might just be a bit too green for it right now.
Right. And Imavov, man, like I said, he's got nice striking. He was fighting out of Paris, France. So shout out to the guys like him and Cyril Gane, who we're going to talk about this week. He didn't look bad, but again, I just felt that there were some openings for him to finish or at least capitalize and have a huge moment, and he couldn't do it, or he allowed Halls to just have his will. So both these guys still have a relatively high ceiling, but one more fight for Halls, being that he's the winner, and then maybe we'll be talking a number. Get a guy with a number.
Yeah, I will agree with that, especially once you told me the win streak he's on.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to deny it, even if his next one is a bit of a similar dud. Right. It's just, eventually you got to just kind of be like, all right, let's see what he does when he's given a guy who's going to bring it right back. But, yeah, just not a ton to take away. Moving on. Chris Daukaus, Alexei Oleinik, we kind of talked about this one a little bit.
Chris freaking Daukaus.
Yeah, so
shout out to him, by the way. Similar to Stipe, he's a police officer full-time when he's not training.
Yeah,
Stipe's
right.
a firefighter.
So I definitely appealed to me a little bit hearing that.
Shout out to Chris Daukaus. And he said, he's looking forward come July to finally get out of the force and make MMA his full-time gig. His brother, of course, UFC middleweight from the Contender Series. Let's see, his name might be Grant. I'm blanking off the top of my head, but his brother was Contender Series winner, and he's doing big things, trying to make his way up the middleweight and get a contender spot in the top 15. So shout out to the two brothers, and man, Daukaus looked good. And I predicted Oleinik to win this.
Yeah, I did
because I didn't know if Daukaus was going to be able to just defend his takedowns, and I knew if it got to the feet or to the ground, Oleinik's going to submit him. We're talking about a guy that had 46 submissions coming into this fight, which is just incomprehensible in my tiny brain. But Daukaus looked good. He defended all takedown attempts, even though there weren't that many good ones. And he really beat up Oleinik bad, and it was hard to watch for Oleinik, in my opinion. And 43 years old, now on a 2-fight skid, both via KO, TKO. It might be time to hang it up solely for the fact that when it's on the feet, Oleinik can't really compete with these heavy hitters at heavyweight. But if he gets you down, he'll still be good. But the problem is every fight starts on the feet. And he got beat up very bad. I think the stoppage was okay. But at the same time, at one point Oleinik looked at the ref as if he was almost like, please stop the fight. And at that point I was like, oh man, this is getting a little intense. So, sucks for Oleinik. Maybe just time to start weighing your options. But man, Chris Daukaus, love it, love it, love it. 3 KO TKOs all in the first round, like I mentioned earlier. Him and Aspinall. I'd love to see it later, but I want that shit right now.
So, this is what's interesting because I don't, I wasn't really prepared to think of Dawkins as like this borderline top 10 guy, but getting that win over Olynyk, now he is. The match that's going to kind of be the one for me, Augusto Sakai.
Yeah, I thought that's what you would say.
Another kind of prove it here. Sakai kind of being another one of those heavyweight prospects now turning into somewhat of a contender, but his last fight being against Alistair Overeem where he got pretty much handled for the majority of the fight, got beat up quite a bit, showing maybe he's being pushed a little too fast. But then you place these two guys against each other. You could do the fight with Aspinall, but I don't really. I think that they're still they haven't faltered yet.
Yeah.
Sakai kind of had that. He has that red now. His last fight lost. You gotta start going backwards again. I think a fight with Dawkins makes a lot of sense. Dawkins does have 3 losses, all three via finish, 2 of them via TKO KO. He's not, in heavyweights. None of these guys.
Anybody has a KO shot.
But even before this win over Olynyk, Dawkins had a win over Parker Porter.
Yep.
Who
very tough
had a
guy.
Really good win over Josh Parisian.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that a fight with Sakai makes a lot of sense. Even Shamil Abdurrahimov, that's another kind of veteran.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see him go up against a guy like Sakai, who's maybe a little
Near
bit more
him.
youthful.
Yeah.
Maybe gives a little bit more to the speed, the power that can maybe match Dawkins in all aspects. So that's what I'm looking for.
I like it.
Moving on. We are on to featherweight fight. Derrick, Minner, Charles Rosa. Pretty lopsided one here.
If you like grappling, this was the one.
So, let me just start with Charles Rosa. I really did like Charles Rosa for quite a while. However, he is very much a grappler. That is his bread and butter, supposedly. He's got 8 wins via submission out of his 13. He's constantly looking for those takedowns, looking to do some work on his back or in the top position, whatever it might be. But this 2 out of his last 3 fights have came against Bryce Mitchell and now Derrick Minner. And I know these are both studs on the ground as well, but he got completely handled in both of them.
Yeah, his only answer in this one was to try and throw like armbar attempts from the bottom, and it was just never really close.
So I'm just going to say that I don't have much faith in Rosa's aspects, I guess, moving forward to really compete with the top of this division because he's very focused on the one aspect. It's very much, he's a grappler, that's what he does. However, we've seen him be outclassed multiple times in the last year at grappling. And one was against Bryce Mitchell, who is a top 15 featherweight. And then now you got Derrick Minner, who I guess was working his way there.
He's all of a sudden knocking on the door.
So, and he's already 34. I'm just a little nervous about Rosa's prospects for the future of this division. He might be a guy that his ceiling's just not as high as I would like it to be, considering how good he's looked in the past.
Mm-hmm.
He even had a good bounce back win over Kevin Aguilar.
Yeah, he's had a crazy stretch of fights.
So, he's even had the losses to Shane Burgos. I know you talked about this Friday. His losses are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Dennis Seaver, Yair Rodriguez, Shane Burgos went to a split decision with Yair Rodriguez.
Seaver was his freaking UFC debut.
Yeah, so he's had definitely not an easy road, but I think maybe he is who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if I'm going to see him ever be a top 15 fighter.
Gotcha.
But still, Derrick Minner.
Derrick Minner looked good, man.
And
Very
again,
good jiu-jitsu.
Look how good he did. Outclassed a guy like Charles Rosa, who was so good on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be excited about his prospects moving forward. So what are your thoughts on the fight as a whole?
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess part of that does go to show the the veteranness of Charles Rosa and the competition he's been in there with. Minner couldn't finish him, but man, he just controlled it the whole time, and he looked so good. And he tried, the submission attempts. He had arm triangles very close to being locked in multiple times. I was very impressed. I love, a lot of people hate on the grapple heavy fights, but ones like that last night are kind of fun. Just watching all the transitions, and you're like, oh, maybe he is going to lock in an arm bar. Maybe he's going to lock in a choke. So overall, Minner looked good. So now it's just like, okay, let's see him get tested on the feet.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think he is knocking on the door of top 15, but I'm not going to go quite just yet. Because number 15 right now at that weight class is Ivalov. I forget his first name. Hold on, it's right here on my screen. It's Mosvar Ivalev, who's 14-0, and that dude's an absolute beast, and he's on a tear right now. So not yet for Minner, but I think one more win, especially if he looks really convincing. And he's finished most of his fights, most via submission. So if he can come in and especially finish his next one, he's right there, ready to take on or get a number.
I have the same thoughts, and I really thought Rosa was going to win this. So a big win for Minner, really showcasing what he can do. And right now, you got to be thinking pretty positive about him. Maybe how far he can go with this, it remains to be seen. But a great test on the ground, and he passed.
Yeah, I mean, if we could ever get him and Mitchell potentially lined up, that'd be fun as hell.
Yeah, especially now with Mitchell showing what he can do on the feet in his last fight with Feely. Co-main event time, and I'm I was a bit disappointed in this one. Actually, I didn't tell you this, so you don't have to believe me. But this would have been the fight I had predicted to be fight of the night. Funny enough,
really?
Yeah. Didn't happen that way, in my opinion. So Yana Kunitskaya does get a unanimous decision win over Ketlin Vieira. I had Ketlin winning this fight. Yeah, I'm just going to be honest. This was a tough night for my predictions. I went 1-5.
I went 2-4.
And that one was Phil Halls, who barely won that fight. I almost went at Ofer.
That would have been the first.
That would have been the first. However, Yana does get the win. And, I don't want to be too hard on Ketlin Vieira because I do think she's still a very good fighter, very good for this division.
Only loss before last night was to Aldana.
Yes. I just think that last night really showed me how good Kunitskaya is.
I agree.
And, it's not fair to her, but she was immediately, before she was ready, placed in a high-profile title
thrown
fight
into the wolves
with Chris Cyborg at featherweight.
Yes.
And she got brutalized in that fight.
Yep.
So since then, haven't heard too much about her.
She flies under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely her first time being a co-main since then. But I don't even know how much she's been on a main card of even fight nights since then. But what did you say before? So
she came in at featherweight, like you said, ever since she dropped down to bantamweight. For those of you who don't know, Yana was a former bantamweight champion in Invicta, which is where all or most of the top tier women's fighters in the UFC come from these days. So that's the type of fighter we're talking about here with Yana. But then she got thrown in with Cyborg at 145. But ever since she dropped down to 135, her natural weight class, she really is long and just really seems to fit well at 135 pounds. She's 4-1 now in the weight class. Only lost to Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd is one of the most highly touted prospects in all of the UFC women's divisions right now.
Yeah.
So if that tells you anything about her, she just got a top 6 victory over Ketlin, and she looked damn good. Now listen, round 1, all Ketlin in my opinion. She just controlled it on the ground. But Ketlin never did anything with her positioning was the issue. Round 2, Yana looked amazing. Dominated the entire second round. Had top control. Her ground and pound looked great. She outnumbered striking-wise to Ketlin, I think 170 to 30 or 40, which is crazy.
I couldn't believe it was that lopsided.
Yeah.
Maybe
she was active from the bottom. Because in the third round, she was on the bottom the whole time. But Ketlin, again, not doing anything with her positioning. Then Yana reverses it to finish the fight, lands some nasty elbows, cut Ketlin open very badly, and that's what won the fight for her. Yeah. She stole the third round.
Yeah, she did. And you know what?
I'm fine with it.
I like it when a guy or girl, I should say in this case, does take a risk. She recognizes her positioning, being that she's on the bottom, being that she's possibly losing a fight, and she goes for it.
Yeah.
While Ketlin Vieira was playing it very safe, in my opinion. And that showed in the striking numbers. This fight did feel closer than maybe it really was.
Yeah.
Again, when you talk about striking, it felt so close, but it really, Yana was all offense. Ketlin was all defense.
If you're a judge in this fight, you're looking at it from one of two ways. Are you going to give it to Ketlin because of all the top control time? Or are you going to give it to Yana because she was way more active from the bottom, and when she was on the top, she was doing damage?
My opinion, and this is a quote from Dana White, it's about damage.
Yeah.
Yana definitely.
And you can't finish a fight better than how she did.
Yeah. So
that
definitely excites me a little more for her in the future, because this is again at bantamweight, which is at very much a stalemate right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, who are the top two under Amanda? Jane Durandamy, Holly Holm. Two people who've been there and have lost to the champ already.
Yep.
Yes, you got people like Aspen Ladd, Aldana, Juliana Pena, now Yana Kunitskaya, Ketlin Vieira. They're all kind of knocking on the door, but these women below them have been shown so far to be incapable of beating those top two in GDR, I keep seeing JDR, and Holly Holm. So it's like those two at the top are basically like playing Red Rover, and if you get past them, you get a chance to fight Amanda Nunes, but nobody seems to be able to get past them.
Yeah.
So it's just left the division at a bit of a stalemate. And that's a credit to Holm and Durandamy, of course, but I'm going to get into kind of who I think should be next for these two ladies.
There's one that's pretty clear. For Yana.
For Yana Kunitskaya, I'm thinking Aspen Ladd.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Rematch.
Oh, yeah.
Aspen TKO'd her in the third round. But
how long ago did that happen?
She's on a 3-fight win streak now. Yana has won 3 fights.
So truthfully, I told you before we started recording kind of my thoughts here. Holly Holm just being matched up with Pena, I think leaves GDR with Aldana.
Yeah. Ladd and Yana, by the way, were December of 19.
So I think you can run that fight back. I mean, maybe you don't. I don't know.
That was actually Ladd's last fight, though.
Was it really?
But Yana's fought 3 times since, so
all right,
that's
fine,
where the issue is.
Fine. I'm going to go Kunitskaya, Irene Aldana.
That's what I was going to do.
I'll do it because that does...
I didn't know that is Aspen's last time fighting. If that weren't the case, I think you could do the rematch.
Yeah, I know.
But Aspen didn't fight at all. I did not even realize that.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that either.
Yana's been active.
I'll go Aldana. I'll leave kind of GDR in an awkward spot, but that's not my problem. That's the fight I would go with. I think that's very exciting. Aldana has shown that she has some power on the feet.
Well, it's cool now because, the only 2 people to beat Ketlin are now Yana and Aldana.
Yeah, so you might
that makes sense. And, I did a recap, like I said, article, and I said Yana can become a title contender again, this time in her natural weight class. And I really do see that in her. And I think, again, for the sake of parity in the division, she could literally go out and beat Aldana. And I know she'd only be number 4, but the way the division is, you never freaking know. Like, they're always looking for new title contenders. So it's like, okay, maybe she beats Aldana, and assuming Aspen Ladd fights one more time, then we can do that rematch for a number 1 contender fight. Or maybe she just gets a title fight next, depending on how the division plays out. There's so many options in a division like this where the top 2 people have already lost to the champion, but they don't lose to anyone else, seemingly. You know what I mean? So I do believe in Yana. I really do. And, her fiance, Thiago Santos, by the way. Just saying.
Hell of a training partner.
That's a power couple right there.
Yeah, hell of a training partner.
And, for Ketlin, she's going to have to take a step back, right? Coming off a loss. Not a bad loss.
I don't think you're going to like who I'm going to place her with, but I feel like I just think it... How do I... So, I know Ketlin losing here, you would think, okay, she's going to fight backwards, right? I'm actually going to put her with Aspen Ladd.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that has to do with Aspen Ladd's inactivity, as you just mentioned. This is totally off the dome, but I'm just saying, I think it's still a good fight.
I think Aspen would take that fight.
Because both women, Aspen Ladd has shown a lot of skills in a lot of different places, but Ketlin's very much been deadly on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I think it does add a wrinkle there where it's a test for Ladd, showing where she's at. Is she really growing? Is she still improving even though she's not been fighting for this
fight? I mean, you just have to look at who hasn't fought each other,
That's what I'm going off of, and I don't really want to see Ketlin go too far back here because I think a lot of these women behind her, once you go behind her and like Sarah McMahon, the herd tends to thin out a little bit. I think that these are all matchups that, while maybe some of these women below her could win, I feel like I think there's a level from like Sarah McMahon on, and I think from 9 down. It's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I was going to do number 10, Macy Chiasson. So she's 7-1. Only lost to Lena Landsberg, who's a veteran of the UFC women's divisions. So take a little step back. She's probably going to get put at number 7. Macy's number 10. Like I said, she's coming off of a win. Macy is coming off of a loss. It'd be a big step up for Macy, the biggest name that she would have fought so far in her career. I was thinking McMahon or Renew, but McMahon just came off of a loss. Renew's lost like 3 or 4 in a row. So I think putting Ketlin up with another kind of prospect label in Macy would be a fun fight. Mm-hmm. But her and Aspen is cool.
Yeah, I know ranking-wise it might not make the most sense, but Aspen Ladd does need to kind of...
She needs to fight somebody.
And I just don't... Her and GDR doesn't make sense, in my opinion, based off the same reason I'm not going to do Ladd and Kunitskaya.
Yeah.
So I think you do that one. Capiche?
Capiche.
Main event time.
I love that word.
Derrick Lewis. I mean, this is a big one.
Holy shit.
That uppercut. Just go ahead. The uppercut from hell over Curtis Blaydes.
Out cold.
Yeah.
Listen, man.
We'll talk about round 1 first.
Okay, round 1. Curtis Blaydes looked good.
Yeah, he did.
He looked good on the feet. No wrestling at all in round 1. I don't even know if he even... I think he had technically attempted one takedown, but it wasn't very... It wasn't like a full-on
It was very fluid.
But on that, man, his leg kicks, taking a toll.
You could you just felt landing, like it felt like he was really growing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And maybe was trying to prove a point a bit because he's been kind of that guy, and I kind of respect him for it, who's been so brutally honest in his assessment of who he is as a fighter and what his game plans are. And he kind of was going against that a little bit here.
Yeah. And he was winning.
But he was winning.
He looked good.
Lewis wasn't looking great early on.
I think Lewis was so just ready for the takedown that he couldn't let his hands go in a normal striking match. And it showed because in the second round, very early on, was it minute 26?
Yep.
Curtis did go in for the all-out normal takedown we're used to seeing. And this was one of the most perfectly timed KO punches you'll ever witness.
Yep.
Curtis shot in. Derrick cocked back the right uppercut. Whoop.
See ya.
So it was weird. Blaydes was like wrapped around Curtis's midsection and asleep at the same time. Yeah. And then he just slow motion fell. I wish they could see us. Yeah. Slow motion fell over. I was literally like, what the fuck just happened? It happened so almost hidden to where you could barely even see the uppercut land. And then the follow-up shots. Ooh. Those were pretty brutal. Mm-hmm. Derrick Lewis, man, he said they trained that same uppercut for 12 straight weeks every day in practice. Well, I believe it after what I saw last night.
I believe it.
And, shout out to Derrick Lewis. Also said he's one of the most badass blue belts in the whole state of Texas, by the way. So you got to respect him there. And another fun thing he said, there's nothing like a post-fight presser with Derrick Lewis.
I know.
He said the reason it was so cold in Texas this past week was because his hot balls were in Vegas for the fight.
So I didn't listen to the post-fight interview, so this is...
He also said he's already oiled up, so he's ready to clap Overeem's cheeks. He said that's the fight he wants next.
He wants Overeem.
He wants Overeem. Then he goes on to say he really doesn't care who he fights next. We're talking about Derrick Lewis about to be ranked number 2.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Normally, and I said this on Friday, this would have been a number 1 contender fight. Problem is, John Jones threw a wrench into everything.
He really did.
Because he is now the number 1 contender, even though he hasn't fought at heavyweight.
He's literally waiting for the winner of Stipe Ngannou.
And so I heard a lot of people last night and even asking Derrick, would you maybe want to welcome John? And kind of like that. And he's like, man, I'll fight anybody. I was like, John is John.
It appears John's not going to do what I thought he might.
Tune-up. Yeah. Or not a tune-up, but a fight to just get something in your belt.
Because, it's a lot to take on either Stipe or an Ngannou in your first fight at heavyweight.
Yeah, I don't care who you are.
So I don't want to call it a tune-up because I said Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah.
Who is a very tough fighter, and I'm not even going to say that Curtis Blaydes couldn't win that fight.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that he has yet to prove that he is either Ngannou or Stipe as far as how good he is. But it doesn't appear he's going to do that. Looks like he's literally going to be fighting for the belt in his first fight at heavyweight.
And again, it kind of stinks because we've never seen Derrick Lewis and Stipe.
No, we haven't.
You know what I mean? And we're probably never going to see it.
However, if we're going to kind of transition into the matchmaking here.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Lewis is going to move to number 2, but the fight that I would want to see, the winner of Rosenstruik Gane.
And that sucks because literally 2 weeks ago we were like, oh, Volkov fights the winner of that fight. That's what you got to do. Yeah. He fights the winner of Gane Rosenstruik. They
this shows how much the
but like we can't do Volkov and Derrick Lewis again. I mean, you could. That was a couple years ago, but like that's probably not going to happen, right? So it's like, oh well, damn it. What does Volkov do? Because he just fought Curtis Blaydes.
A lot of it depends on who wins that fight between.
I'm going to say
and Gane.
One of the guys from Rosenstruik Gane is going to fight Lewis, and the other one is going to fight Volkov.
Well, how about we just put it like this? Let's do Derrick Lewis versus Jairzinho Rosenstruik, and then let's do Volkov versus Gane.
No matter what happens,
because Rosenstruik and Volkov has already happened, and Gane, even with the win over Rosenstruik, he's still so fresh.
Yeah. He would be fresh in the
top doesn't, five. And really, wins over any of these guys can put you in place for a title shot.
Yeah.
So it's to me, it's almost like the numbers don't even matter that much. It's just these guys are all high level, but they're all kind of grouped together in this, like, you got your 2 guys fighting for the belt, then you got John Jones, and then, whoop, there's the herd.
Yeah.
There's everybody else.
What are your thoughts on Derrick wanting to fight Overeem, just out of curiosity?
No, don't love it. Don't love it for Overeem, but at the same time, man, I could totally see Overeem.
What if Overeem would have beat Volkov?
Oh, then yeah. Completely.
But being the way that he
lost, I'm kind of hoping that maybe Overeem's done.
Fair enough.
But if it happens, will I be excited? Of course.
Yeah.
And Overeem might surprise some people.
You never know.
But, he might get his cheeks clapped.
I just wanted to get your thoughts. Yeah, Derrick Lewis.
No, I love Overeem, and I love Derrick Lewis, and Lewis's attitude to MMA is so interesting. He literally goes, I hate this shit. He's like, this shit's a job to me.
Something else he said, I'm glad you're talking about how he is as a person. He said, man, I don't want no more 5-round fights. He said, I want a 3-round fight next. And they're like, well, don't you want to be a main event? And he's like, hell no, I don't want to fight 5 rounds. 5-round fights suck. He said his body just quits on him. He said his body hates him when he does 5-round fights.
Yeah, so it appears his attitude is always like, this is a job.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't give a fuck about MMA. He's like, I'm just doing this shit for a paycheck.
And he did get a bonus, by the way.
Kind of respect it.
Yeah.
But he just
16-5.
His legacy it's going to be so interesting to look back on.
Look at the guys he's fought.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, the guy's really built quite a legacy for himself. Not only for being a character, but also for the fighter he is. The 12 knockouts.
Yeah, tied for first all time. Obviously the most ever as a heavyweight. He's got one. I think now, let's see. Andre's number 1 at heavyweight for wins at 19. Lewis now has 16. I believe he's tied for 3rd or even 2nd. He has more wins at heavyweight than Stipe.
Yeah.
Stipe has 14, just to put it into perspective a little bit.
So he's been doing it for a while, and he just always
almost at an underrated level.
Well, in a lot, of ways, he's
until that Volkov win, he was underrated to a certain extent.
Definitely. He's had, those 5 losses, they have came in high-profile matchups. He did lose to Mark Hunt back in the day, and one of his first headliners. Then he knocked out Travis Brown and said, "Where's Ronda Rousey's fine ass at?" And
he lost to JDS. That was the last fight Junior won. I mean, it's just he's fought literally almost everybody in the freaking.
And then he lost to Cormier for a title.
Yeah,
a fight he took a month after beating Volkov in a fight that he was losing. Until the last 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Just madness. The guy's career is just really interesting to look back on.
What a guy.
That might be an episode down the road in a couple of years.
All Derrick Lewis.
Just a career retrospective. It might be interesting. But, yeah, really, the matchmaking here is kind of... It's easy for us. It's hard, sense. But it's easy.
Yeah.
It's hard because I like to give the one name,
but
it's easy because I'm not going to be upset really who gets placed with who.
Let's see who wins Gane Rosenstruik and how they win.
Yep, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So we'll probably talk about it this week.
So that's pretty much it
for a
for
week from now.
UFC Vegas 19, correct? UFC Vegas 19.
Vegas 19. They're racking up.
Yeah.
Next will be 20.
So, as for the rest of the week, Wednesday...
We're back.
This one's a little extra special. It's the second edition of This or That.
Mm-hmm.
And now the concept being that me and Dom...
Kind of just go.
We just kind of go.
I mean, the first one is very...
Centered on...
what do we want to see in 2021?
Fights that could happen in 2021, you know? And we're still kind of working the kinks out on, like, this concept, but the whole... purpose of it is
to present options to one another, and we pick
and then we discuss, and it's all tailored around fights, but it can branch out a little bit, you know, and we won't delve into that just in case we do that in this episode, but
we're just gonna surprise you.
Just be on the lookout for that on Wednesday. We really like doing the first episode, so I'm thinking this is going to be a series we're really
this or that first episode. If you guys haven't seen our first This or That, we really love that episode. Go check that out for all the fights we want.
And I talked a lot more in detail in that episode about what the concept is and whatnot. So go there. I'm still working it out, but it's one of our favorites to do, and I think it's appropriate to do a second one here. So that's coming Wednesday. Then you got Friday.
Woo!
Another fight night. UFC Vegas 20.
The heavyweights are just banging in February.
Taking over February. Woo! Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Cyril Gane.
We're high on Gane.
Yeah, Gane, excuse me. I just like Gane better, but Gane.
We got to have that French.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know what? This fight night's actually really good.
This is, yeah.
And honestly, the prelims on this one are stacking up.
They're damn near a fight night in their own.
Yeah. But honestly, your headline with Rozenstruik Gane, light heavyweight is a big one for the co-main. Nikita Krylov, Magomed Ankalaev.
Our rescheduled bout between Munoz and Rivera.
Yeah, that's a huge one. If you want to go off the prelims, I mean, Alexander Hernandez, Thiago Moises is a great fight.
Thiago Moises has been on the podcast.
William Knight, Alonzo Menafield. Honestly, Dom.
Randy Brown, Alex Oliveira.
I'm just going to be honest. It's a 6-fight main card, but I think we might be talking
We might have to do a little bit more.
We might have to do a bit more. So, be on the lookout for that on Friday.
We might just do all 13 fights. No, I'm just kidding.
Whoa. But yeah, be on the lookout for that. Jeez, can't talk.
It's all right. We're excited.
On Friday. But until then, Dominic Salee, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Find me on Twitter and Instagram at DSalee14. More importantly, find the podcast on Twitter, on Instagram at BAJ_MMA podcast.
And if you go to my bio on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_, you'll be taken to our links tree, which gives you the links to all the platforms that the podcast is on, along with our social media platforms. That includes the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. It's all on there, baby. And there's a couple links for the Anchor page. First, leaving a voice message.
Yeah.
If you have thoughts about an upcoming fight, a news story, if you want to give your predictions, tell us hi, or say we're a piece of shit, you got 60 seconds to do so. And there's another link if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. That just provides us with a few dollars a month, and all that money goes back into improving the quality of the podcast, whether it be audio equipment or down the line doing a video podcast. So again, you can find all that if you go to my bio on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_. But with that, we're out. We'll see y'all on